Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Voodoo Garden. My name is Ray. I will be your host today. And I have not filmed in a couple weeks, except for a real quick update on something, but that's okay because I only film when I have something interesting to show you, and I definitely have something interesting to show you. Take a look at this. Okay. About a week ago, I did a short clip and I uploaded it onto the Voodoo Garden channel, and I asked you, what is this thing? It looked like a big dust bunny. Well, let me give you a close-up shot of this and I'll explain what it is. This unremarkable looking thing is called a resurrection plant, a dinosaur fern, or a Jericho rose, or maybe a half a dozen other names. All it is a desert plant, and it's all rolled up into a ball like you saw in the previous Voodoo Garden episode, and it rolls around. It rolls around in the desert, bone-dry desert, and this desert, I forgot what the name of it is, generally you can go about 25 to 50 years without rain. And this plant is designed to survive in that environment. Yes, this plant will not die. It sort of looks like it's dead, but it's not. It curls up into a really tight ball that looks like a dust bunny to conserve moisture, and it turns brown. It looks totally dead, and the wind will catch it, roll it around, and once in a blue moon, literally once in decades, there will be some rain, and it'll form puddles. And then the wind blows this, it happens to land in a puddle by chance, and that's a really weird coincidence. And it will land in the puddle. What will happen is, within a matter of hours, it opens up, and then by the next day or the day after, it starts turning green. So this thing has absolutely no working mechanism on it whatsoever. It's just this dry looking thing. And I put it in water, it opened up, and it started turning green after a day or so. What it'll do is it'll soak up water, soak up light, and eventually put out little flowers if you're lucky. It'll put out flowers, make seeds, the little seeds will fall off, and I guess they'll turn into little tiny tumbleweeds like this, and the process starts again. Yep, this is an amazing plant. It just folds up and takes off whenever it needs to go somewhere, so it doesn't really take root. It just has these weird little thingies down here that soak up water, so it doesn't really have a permanent home. It's a real nomad, and I think this is really something fascinating for the Voodoo Garden. I saw this online for $4 and I had to get it. I thought, I have some friends that are going to just love something like this. So if you have a kid or a very simple-minded adult like me who entertains easy, get one of these things. It's great for Easter because it's called the resurrection plant, and I think that's a really good name for it. But it's also great for kids, for adults, for people who just want to have something that's a little bit of a novelty. And if you get tired of it, take it out of the water, set it on a table or a shelf or out in the sun. It'll curl right back up in about a day or so, and it'll dry up, bone dry, and you can toss it in a drawer, save it, pass it down to your kids. This thing will last generations, and then you give it to somebody else, they toss it in water, and it starts all over again. So this is a resurrection plant, another member of the Voodoo Garden. I'm really glad to have it. This one is called the Bishop's Hat Pepper. I started growing it in October. This plant has been a great little test dummy for the Voodoo Garden because it has been through heck. It has really been through heck. I grew this as a seed that a viewer gave me, and it grew up. I showed you how to prune plants, you know, how to make them fork and prune and then make it fork again, and it did really wonderful. And then it was also a test dummy for a condition called pepper leaf edema. And that is a condition where your pepper leaves will start looking like kind of bumpy, and they look kind of sad, and you don't know what's going on. They may curl a little bit. That's a condition that is caused by watering issues along with humidity issues, and it is not a deal breaker. It is basically the plant version of acne in a teenager. It goes through this stage because it's a little imbalanced with its fluid intake and stuff, and it will outgrow it. Once you plant them outside or they get bigger, they outgrow the condition, and it did outgrow the condition. Thirdly, it is now going through a condition, well, not a condition, but an infestation in my grow room of white flies. If you've never had white flies, all you have to do is touch your plant. These little tiny white specks will fly up. White flies are not a deal breaker either. White flies are more of a nuisance than anything. White flies will live underneath the leaves, and they're these itty bitty white gnats, not fungus gnats. Oh, you might see one going in front of the camera there. But I have them all over the place in here. You can go nuts and you can be crazy and spray for them and stuff. But the thing is that pepper plants, well, my pepper plants, they tend to have a problem with being sprayed with pyrethrin. I like to use pyrethrin for getting rid of bugs because it kills instantly, it's organic, it's natural, it's all that fun stuff. But sometimes the plants, when they are stressed, will have an adverse reaction to it. And I watched how the whiteflies behaved, and I also researched them. Turns out they're really more of a nuisance than a plant-killing pest. They do secrete like what's called honeydew, which is a fancy word for insect poop. And yeah, it's gross. And it sticks on your leaves, and that can be a medium for fungus or any kind of disease to start. Thing is, I don't have any diseases going on in here. Good for me. And I've never had a problem. So every now and then when I shake my plants, these little white things come off. And I really don't worry about it. I'm a low-impact gardener and I don't stress out about stuff. If it's not going to kill my plant, I really don't mess with it because I have better things to do than to fight with these little bugs. And they're not hurting anything, so I let them live. When summer comes along, a lot of these plants are going to be going out into the garden. And when they're out in the garden, they have a lot of natural predators, little spiders, other kinds of little baby wasps, and other kinds of stuff that are going to eat the whiteflies. So I have no problems with that at all. I take the plant and the whiteflies outside. The remaining plants like the pineapple, the citrus plants and things like that that are going to remain in the voodoo garden during the summer, they don't seem to be bothered. I don't see any whiteflies on them. So the kind of cool thing is the tropical plants up here aren't bothered by whiteflies. So once I get all of these peppers and tomatoes out, problem solved. I know, I always look for the easy way out. But, take a look at what this thing did. I want to give you a close-up of this because I want you to see just how beautiful ripe Bishop's Hat peppers are. Really kind of ugly. They're really not that pretty. They're strange looking Christmas ornaments, and this is what they look like when they're not ripe. Kind of a light yellow, greenish color. But then, as they ripen, here's what they'll look like. A really beautiful orangish red is what they start turning. And then when they get fully ripe, turn it some more. This is what a fully ripe Bishop's Hat pepper looks like. Pretty much all orange. It's just a beautiful, beautiful pepper. One of the things I wanted to do is taste one of these to see what it tastes like, because I have read that if you eat the lobes, you know, just the outside lobes, it's a mild, very flavorful pepper. But you know the pith on the inside that holds the seeds, that is supposed to be scalding hot. So that's kind of a cool thing. Most peppers are either hot, they're mild, they're medium, all the way through. This is the only pepper that I know of that has heat and mildness all on the same pepper. So without washing it, I love that. I can just pick it right off the plant. Don't have to worry about pesticides or anything. It's sweet. It actually has a sweetness to it. Absolutely mild. There's no heat whatsoever. You know, it's not like a bell pepper. It's not like a peppercini. It's actually almost a fruity sweetness to it. And you know what that would be good as? On salads. This would be absolutely perfect on a salad. Now, I know what you're waiting for. Ray, let's try the inside of the pepper. Okay, you know, I'm not a fan of really, really hot peppers. I only grow those jalokias and scorpions because it's fun. Now I'm going to try the inside and see if it's true that the inside's really hot. Okay, now if I go running screaming, that means it's hot. I have that look on my face like I'm just waiting for anything to happen. It is hot. It is hot. But you know what? I'm waiting for it to kick my butt. It's kind of like half as hot as a jalapeno. Yeah. No, I feel ripped off. I thought it was going to scald me and ignite me. So, yeah. It's kind of sweet, though. And as much as I enjoy the sweet flavor and stuff, this is not a pepper that I would grow for everyday use. It's a novelty, it was fun, and if I grew it outside, it would no doubt be this big, huge thing with all kinds of beautiful peppers. But I wanted to grow this just to find out what it's all about. Now I know. Problem solved! You, sir, are going to hit the compost heap because I'm really not too awful impressed with you. Although it is a beautiful plant, you can't grow everything, can you? Speaking of everything, actually not speaking of everything, speaking of beautiful, take a look at what I have here. This is a plant that's going to be going out into the garden this year, but I started inside. This is called a peppercini. I call it a peppercini. Some people pronounce it pepperoncini, and I always get these crazies that post on my page and try to correct me on how to pronounce things. But the thing is, folks, is that I pronounce things the way that I feel like pronouncing them. I don't always pronounce them right, and sometimes I pronounce them wrong just to tick off those people who want to try and correct me on my pronunciation, because I really don't care. I'm just having a good time here. This is the Voodoo Garden. Lighten up, folks. All right, peppercinis. Take a look at what a peppercini can do inside. Yes. Even before. This is what a peppercini looks like. A peppercini is a mild Italian pepper that is normally picked small, pickled, and stored in jars, and you have them with like roast beef sandwiches, tossed on salads. They're a very mild, very flavorful Italian pepper, and this is normally the size that you would pick them, about maybe half the size of your pinky. And some let them go a little bit longer, and but look at this. This little plant was just supposed to get, you know, maybe a foot tall, and then I'd throw it out in the garden, but it decided to start going nuts. So once they get a little bit bigger, they get a little darker green. Isn't that a beautiful dark green? Almost a jalapeno green, huh? But it goes even further and it gets even better. This is what a peppercini looks like when it ripens. You don't normally see this because they pick them when they're young. Yes, they actually turn orange and then red. And look at this. They are literally everywhere on this plant. Yeah, it's loaded. I think there's over a dozen peppers on this plant. Oops, I should probably stop bending it over. Hey, Ray, snap your plant in half, will you? But this is a peppercini. This is what it looks like, or pepperoncini. And I grew this from a seed, and I don't remember when I started it, but I think it was a couple months ago or something like that, maybe 3 months ago. Yeah, I'm going to grow this until the ground thaws outside. I'm going to grow it in a pot inside. And then when it warms up outside, I'm going to take it out there. I'm going to show you where I transplant it and grow it in my raised beds all season. But for right now, I'm going to probably pick off all these peppers and toss them into something and eat them, because it's getting a little heavy for this little plant. And I normally don't let my pepper plants fruit indoors. I like to focus on growth. But this is an exception. I wanted to show you something a little bit interesting, a little bit fun. For those of you who are going to grow in containers or inside, yes, you can. And as far as pollinating them, let me show you. I've shown this before, but some people haven't seen it. You get a flower, take your finger and just go like this. Tickle, tickle, tickle. And then go on to the next one and do the exact same thing. This pollinates your flowers. You could use a Q-tip, you could use a special device. Come on, folks, you got 10 of these things. Use your fingers. They're not going to bite. These are just flowers. And another one, open up. There you go. Okay, done deal. Next one in the Voodoo Garden is what's called a nardello pepper, or I call it Italian grilling pepper. Some people call them Italian horn peppers, and I was calling it that, but it's not. An Italian horn pepper is hot. This is a nardello, which is an Italian mild grilling pepper. I grew these last year, and the peppers were like a foot long. They were beautiful. They were the most delicious things I've ever had in my life. And I've grown a lot of different peppers. I've grown bell peppers, I've grown giant marconis, I've grown peppercinis, I've grown, there was another one, cubanelles. And the most flavorful mild pepper I've ever found in my life, and I'm old, is the nardellos. I'm growing this indoors because I want this to turn into this big, honkin' huge plant like the jalokia and scorpion. I want to have a mild pepper like that because I like growing the jalokia, I like growing the scorpion, they're fun to grow, but I don't eat those peppers, so they're basically just for looks. I want something that's going to be huge, as big as me, and is going to produce fruit indoors all year round, and this is the one I've selected. These are just small peppers. They just started growing. And so, yes, it's putting out all kinds of peppers just like the peppercini. And these peppers will no doubt not get as big as the ones outside, because generally when you grow indoors, you don't get the huge honking results that you get outdoors, because no matter what I do with my lives, no matter what kind of magic I work on this soil, nothing compares to outdoor growing. You can try to duplicate it as best as you can, but it's always going to be second rate. So this will eventually be this big, huge plant that I'm going to show you all the peppers and the progress as the years go by. But I'm not going to, try to fool myself into thinking I'm going to, do the same thing as I do outdoors, because I won't. But I have 1, 2, 4 of these things, and they're not this big, but there are smaller ones that I'm going to be growing in my raised beds outdoors. And so tune in, and I'm going to show you what these things can do if they're given the right conditions outside in a garden setting. So Nardellos, indoors, outdoors, and they're going to be fun to grow. And last on the Voodoo Garden tour is something that I've been dying to show you. These are the 3 tomato plants. Ooh, I just spit. These, it's a juicy day in the Voodoo Garden. These are 3 tomatoes that I'm going to be growing this year. Last year I grew a wild, crazy amount. Yeah, you know it because I do this. Yes, I grew a wild, crazy amount of tomatoes because Rich sent me some seeds, and I did Project Tomato, and I gave away a lot of those seeds. It was a really fun, happy, crazy, wild, strange ride, but I'm not going to do that again. This year is the back to basics year for me. I'm going to grow 3 different types of tomatoes, and I think I've covered what I want this year. I want a cherry tomato, so I have my now famous Prax cherry, which started out many years ago as a hybrid, a little tiny bush hybrid. Saved the seeds, grew it, saved the seeds, grew it, and now I call it an heirloom. You may not call it an heirloom, but you're not growing it, are you? I'm growing it, and I call it an heirloom because it does the exact same thing every single year, is true to its parent plant, and no longer exhibits the wild craziness and the original characteristics of the hybrid. So I'm going to grow this for cherry tomatoes, and this one, ooh, play the shell game here. This one is called Boxcar Willie. Boxcar Willie is the most flavorful tomato I've ever found in my life, and I love this thing. Thing is, I grew this right next to, what was that tomato I grew it next to? Oh, Belgium Giant. And but I saved the seeds from the Boxcar Willie, so I have no idea what I got here. I might have a Boxcar Belgium or a Belgium Willie or something like that. But whatever it is, they both have a great flavor. So no matter what I got here, I got something that tastes fantastic. And I'm going to grow a Boxcar Willie because that is a beefsteak tomato, and I love a beefsteak tomato, and I love the flavor on that. That's going to be used for beefsteak and for canning. I'm not growing the Polish linguiça. I'm not growing any kind of paste tomato because I'm going to grow a Boxcar Willie and use that in place a paste tomato. You may wonder, how are you going to do that, Ray? Well, you're going to have to tune in this year because I'm going to be showing you how this grows outside. I'm going to show you how I process beefsteak tomato into tomato sauce and tomato paste and tomato products this year. I'm going to be showing you that. So stay tuned on the Praxis channel. I'll show you that. Last on the Voodoo Garden tour is silver. What are you? Silver fir tomato. This is a determinate, smaller patio type tomato. Somebody sent me the seeds, and I'm really thankful that they did. I'm going to try and grow this outdoors and see what it turns into, because I have never done anything like this. I've tried Tiny Tim's, big failure. No, not Tiny Tim's, I'm sorry. Micro Tums. Micro Tums were a big fail. I mean, who needs a tomato plant that big? Barbie, but I didn't. And Tiny Tims were fun, but I want to try something different than Tiny Tim. That one was like this Arnold Schwarzenegger looking thing. This one is a little bit more delicate. I love the leaf structure. I love the look of this thing, and I'm dying to see what it does outside. So I will let you know how it tastes, how it grows, and everything about these. But one last thing. I know I said last thing a minute ago, but I was lying. Yeah, I was lying. I have done demos over demos on how to prune plants, but I want to do another demo to show you, because this is about the time of year that people are messaging me on Facebook daily, on YouTube, asking me, Ray, I got these tomatoes, should I prune them? Okay, let's do a pruning right now, real time on my tomatoes. Come on in close and take a look at exactly how I prune my tomatoes. Okay, so there's no doubt whatsoever on what I'm going to be doing this year and how I'm going to do it. Let's prune Mr. Willie, shall we? It's very simple. I want to make sure I have at least 2 suckers. Here's what a sucker is. A sucker is not a leaf. This is a leaf stem. This will not grow. It'll put out leaves and that's it. It's a dead end. It's a food generator for the plant. This right here, where the leaf stem meets the plant, a new plant is starting. That is called a sucker. And a lot of people will tell you, suckers are bad, pinch them off. Well, if you're trying to contain your plant and grow it straight up, yes, you may want to remove the suckers, but I don't do that. I've never done that. I like to promote the lower suckers because what I'm going to do is I'm going to prune this off right here. Oh, that looks really bad. It really isn't. Those of you that have followed me on pruning my peppers, you know that this may look really bad, but it's not. It's a good thing. And what it's going to do now, the plant can no longer grow here, right? These don't grow out. The only way that this plant can grow is right here. And since it had more top going, it had roots that are going to support that. Now that it no longer has that to support, it has a great root system, drawing up great nutrients. It has nowhere to put all of that. Where's it going to put it? To the brand new plants here. So within a couple weeks, these things are just going to get huge and start growing some more. And that is going to make the plant even fatter. So once those get even taller, I'll prune them a little bit and have a couple more lower ones. So eventually I'm going to have this bush of a plant. And right about that time is when it's time to take it outside. I'm going to plant this in the garden, dig a deep hole, bury this up to around here where these 2 suckers here start, so it'll look like 6 plants or so coming out of one hole. And that is one very healthy plant. You think about it from here down. That is a heck of a root system. And so these are going to put out roots on top of the other roots. They're going to have a very nice deep root system, which is going to help the plant survive the hot, dry season. And with the deeper roots, it can get to the water a lot easier and not wilt a lot faster than some plants that have a shallow root system or that are laid down in the trench system. I've tried the trench system. It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing, but I like to do the deep watering. That way it keeps the soil dry during the summer and it keeps the fungus off your leaves. You know, you get that early blight. My plants don't get it quite as easy as most because I keep the soil dry. The reason I can keep the soil dry? Deeper roots. Now this is the silver fir. I wanted to give you a close-up of this. Normally I would prune back a plant, but since this is going to be a determinate, shorter plant, there really is no need for me to do that. I'm going to let this grow and see what it looks like. If it gets a little too tall and a little bit too lanky, yeah, I'll prune it. But for right now, I think it's doing just fine. Now take a look at this up close. I'm going to zoom in and show you something. And this will explain a little bit of why I do what I do. Okay. Let's zoom in as close as I can get and still keep it focused because I need to show you something that may help you. Okay, I think that's about as close as we're going to get. Right at the soil line, take a look at this. These are new roots coming out. The tomato plants that you have will grow roots anywhere the stem is buried. This is why I like to bury my plants deeper, because the deeper you bury them, the more roots it's going to have. So when I take this outside, let's cover this back up. When I take this outside and I plant it, I'm going to bury this thing probably about a few inches higher on the stem. That way these new roots that are starting here, they're going to be a couple inches underneath the soil, and then we're going to get new roots right here, which will sturdy the plant, speed the growth, and feed a heavy harvest that this plant is going to put out. It's a win-win situation. So when you do take your tomato plants out into the garden, make sure that you bury them deeper than the original soil. That's really going to help them out. It's one of the best tips I could possibly give you. I know I was going to get a lot of questions if I didn't mention this, but this little plant that was back here, this is called a Jerusalem artichoke or a sunchoke. Whatever you want to call it, it's a beautiful plant. I used to live on 80 acres up north. You remember those episodes from up there. I didn't show this, but I did have these things growing wild up there, and I didn't know what they were. I had wildlife growing that I had no idea what it was. I just called them the multi-headed sunflowers, kind of like a hydrant. They had these little daisy sunflower things on them, and they were really beautiful. They attracted bees like you would not believe, and they were really nice looking plants. Turns out I had sunchokes, a Jerusalem artichoke growing wild on my property, and I had no idea. So a friend, a viewer, sent me a box of Jerusalem artichoke roots, and I had them in my basement, and they started to rot. Yeah, I didn't plant them soon enough. I thought they'd last longer, but they didn't. So I took one of the ones that didn't rot, and I managed to get it to grow. And I've been pampering this thing, and it has got one heck of a strong stem. These things will spread like crazy. They have these roots that look kind of like ginger or something like that. And you can dig up the roots, you can cook them, eat them. They're absolutely delicious. They put out beautiful flowers that draw bees and all kinds of pollinating insects to your garden. I would not plant this too close to anything that I didn't want it to take over, because they will invade and go nuts and everything. But you know what? It's a beautiful plant, and I don't mind it going nuts, but it's not going in my garden, it's going off to the side. Remember where I showed the roses underneath the pine tree on the Praxis channel? Yep, that's where this is gonna go. This is gonna go nuts underneath there. I'm gonna have all kinds of yellow flowers, Jerusalem artichoke roots, courtesy of a friend. But thank you for sending me the Jerusalem artichoke, whoever it was. I really do appreciate it. And thank you everybody for joining me in the Voodoo Garden. I gotta get going. This is Ray at the Voodoo Garden. I am out of here. Have a great day, everybody.